Well, it is good to see each and every one of you here. I know Mikey's not in here, but Mikey and Jared, I want to thank them for the hard work of putting that meal together. I know it's helping a lot of us, so I truly appreciate that. We've got a lot of prayer, a lot of praise. Now, it's time to dive deep into God's Word, and our study is actually on studying, right? How to study the Bible, different Bible study methods. Last week, we looked at character quality. And some of us may not have had homework in a long time, but I thought this would at least give us a chance to work on our skills before we all read through the Bible together starting in January. So, what was the character quality we were supposed to study? Boldness. Okay, I studied the right one then. Boldness. So, if you use the handout that I gave you, you're supposed to list the character quality, boldness. Did anybody find a good definition that you like of boldness? Uh-oh, Rick's pointing at somebody. Catherine, she's got a good definition?
I don't know if it's good or not, but I can read it.
All right.
The courage to stand for one's faith and speak truth, driven by confidence in a spiritual power, not by a need for approval.
Okay. Now, what did you do? Quote Rick? Because there's a lot of wisdom in that. Hey, I like that. Anybody else got anything a little bit different? Because that's absolutely correct.
I have the willingness to take risks and act innovatively with confidence and courage.
Okay. So I think we're all kind of on the same page. Now, I think we were supposed to list some synonyms there, right? All right. Anybody find any synonyms that you liked for boldness?
I found courage and bravery.
Courage and bravery. I'm like Gina, I got courage at the end of mine there. Anybody else?
I found a couple interesting ones. Moxie.
Moxie.
Having moxie.
We don't use that word a lot.
I haven't heard that in a long time.
Yeah.
And having heart.
Having heart. That's interesting. All right. Number two, what were some opposite qualities of boldness that you found in your study? Chicken. Hey, we're in the South. Every single person in this room knows what that means. Yellow belly. I like that. All right. Weak. Shy. Actually, I got shyness too. Fear. Cowardice. I heard something over this way. You guys say it?
She said
Timidness. Yes. I've got timidness. Absolutely. Cowardice, timidness, fear, shyness, and one that I found, softness. I don't know if that is or not. It's probably not one I would use, but in my study I found that to be a synonym of boldness. All right, now here's where it's going to get a little harder. Here's where we had to put a little work into it. What did you find out about boldness in your simple word study?
I found out that there's multiple words in the Bible for boldness.
There is.
The one I like the most though is, I think I'm saying it right, omets, O-M-E-T-Z.
Okay.
And it means courage, strength, and heart. So
Okay. Anybody else? The Hebrew word is batah, B-A-T-A-H. Of course, you know, Hebrew's characters, not letters. But it means to be confident. We see that in Proverbs 28:1. The wicked flee when no one is pursuing them, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. New Testament, I found two words that's used a lot for boldness. That is therio, to be confident, bold, or daring. And parizomai, to speak boldly or freely. So Gina's right. One thing, and Tina asked last week, why boldness? We'll see, or you probably have seen, there are many words in the Greek and Hebrew for this. You know, it's kind of like in our English. Brother Glenn, he always plays on words. I told him one day I was going to run down the road. He said, it'd be better if you drive your car. You know, when we say run down the road, we mean get in our vehicle and drive. But that word run can mean several different things. All right, what about cross references? What did you find? Anybody besides Gina? Give us one, Gina.
Joshua 1:9. And
I don't have that one.
sorry, I wrote a note down about it, but I didn't write the actual verse. Hold on.
Be strong and courageous.
I'm sure that's what it is, yeah.
It's right after Deuteronomy.
I know. My fingers would work. What did I say, 1:9? Okay, there we go. 1. I wouldn't expect you to get called on so much. Haven't I commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
Amen. Anybody else? I've got John 7:26. Yet look, he's speaking publicly, and they're saying nothing to him. Can it be true? Can it be true that the authorities know he is the Messiah? Now, that cross reference is showing the boldness of Christ in speaking publicly. Boldness comes from God. So I cross-referenced Hebrews 13:6. Therefore we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? So I've got Jesus. Boldness comes from the Lord. And Peter and John in Acts 4:13. When they observed the boldness of Peter and John and realized that they were uneducated and untrained men, they were amazed and recognized that they had been with Jesus. Man, wouldn't you like to speak so bold about God that they say, man, that person spends time in the Word. That person's been with Jesus today. All right, so now this could be different for everybody. Who did you choose for a small, short, biographical study? Well, I chose Paul. Paul witnessed boldly for Christ according to Acts 9:27. Paul wrote boldly to the churches according to Romans 15:15. And I'll read that one. Nevertheless, I have written to remind you more boldly on some points because of the grace given to me by God. And guess what? Paul even faced death boldly. Philippians 1:20. My eager expectation and hope is that I will not be ashamed about anything, but that now as always, with all courage, Christ will be highly honored in my body, whether by life or by death. And I've read it, but my memory verse that I wrote down is Hebrews 13:6. Therefore we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Now 7, 8, and 9 were applicational. A situation or relationship that we can show boldness with. I wrote down just simply sharing faith with my family. You know what? If I go in Food City and I tell a stranger about the Lord and they look at me like I'm some kind of crazy nut job and walk away, Who cares? I ain't probably never going to see them again. But when it's your close family, sometimes we're not as bold, if we're going to be honest. Of course, number 8, a project would be call and talk to my family about Christ. And the personal illustration, that's when you do your project and things, and you have time to reflect upon that and journal how that went. Okay, I told you it wasn't one of my favorites, character quality. It's a lot more topical, and that's what we're getting into tonight. Not topical, but themes. Studying themes, all right? In studying themes in the Bible, you want to ask the simple questions: what, why, when, how, where, and who. Those are your questions, right? Definition given. The thematic method of Bible study involves approaching a biblical theme with a set of not more than 5 predetermined questions in mind. You then trace that theme through the Bible or a single book by asking on those questions, summarizing your conclusion, and writing out a personal application. Okay, so basically, you think of something that the Lord lays on your heart, a theme. But, look at the next point. A thematic study is similar, but much shorter than a topical study. So, what's the difference in a theme and a topic? Well, a theme could be, I'm going to study the prayers of Jesus. So where would you look to find those? It's not a hard question. Yeah, the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's where Jesus is praying, right? But a topic would be prayer. Whew. You could spend decades studying prayer in the Bible. So it's much shorter, it's much more focused. That's the difference between a theme and a topic. So what are some of the advantages to studying our Bibles like this? Number 1, you don't need a lot of reference tools. You know, if you're going to study the prayers of Jesus, read the Gospels. Whenever Jesus stops and pray, pause there. Look at what he says. You know, we have the model prayer. And Jesus walks down through there on how to pray. Another advantage is it's much shorter in length and time compared to a topical study. Like I said, if you were going to study the topic of prayer, I've got a whole shelf, probably that many books on prayer. It's a lot. You know what? This method can help you preview a topic. You know, maybe the Lord lays something on your heart, and you're like, I would like to know a little bit more about this. And it would allow you to kind of get that layer instead of having to go so deep. And you might be like, okay, I'm not as interested in this as I thought it was. Another advantage is you're not going to waste your time. You can turn this into a lesson. You could save this for later study. If you want to turn your theme into a topic, you might say, well, let me look at the prayers of Jesus and how that compares to how Paul told the church to pray. All right, let's look at some tips on doing this study. Do not use too many questions and get bogged down. Like I said, you might want to come up with 2, 3, 4, 5, but anything more than that's going to bog you down and turn into a topic. Many times, I would say almost all the time, you will not find the answer to your question, and I put an S there, in a single verse. Like I said, if you were going to study the prayers of Jesus, I hope we wouldn't define a doctrine on one verse. That's dangerous. We need to look at all the prayers, and that's where you're going to really get into the answer of your question. I like this. If you struggle to find answers to your questions, the questions that you've made, your question may be too narrow or maybe too broad. Like I said, you can go a little bit deeper. You can go a little more narrow. Steps. So this is going to lead up to our homework next week. Steps on doing this study. Choose a theme to study. Well, that's kind of obvious, right? List all the verses you intend to study. So you kind of do a little bit of homework up front, right? Decide on the questions you will ask. Ask your questions of each reference. When you get to that verse, how does that answer your question? How does that apply to your question? Draw some conclusions to your study. You know, we're not just hearers of the word, we're doers. What's your conclusion? Why? Let's take Jesus' prayer, for example. What questions might you ask? Remember the who, when, what, where. I'm just throwing it out there.
Maybe like what situation?
Oh, great example. What situations was Jesus in when he prayed? We know Jesus prayed right before his crucifixion, right? He went to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus prayed when he was praying for Peter and the other apostles. He prayed for their safety. You know, another great question might be, how did Jesus pray? You know, Father, hallowed be thy name. The first thing Jesus did in prayer, how Jesus prayed, first thing he did was honor God, right? And then Jesus said that how we should pray for forgiveness. You know, so those are some of the questions you might want to ask. And then draw some conclusions. What would a conclusion be? Do I really pray to forgive others the way I should? When I go into prayer, is my first priority honoring God? Or do I treat him like a genie and say, Lord, this is what I need? You know, this is the type of things. And then, of course, after you come up with a conclusion, you know, maybe I don't pray for that I can forgive others the way I should. A personal application. You know, brother so-and-so hurt my feelings last week. A personal application would be, I need to call them and tell them that I love them. And let them know that they hurt my feelings. And ask them for their forgiveness, for letting that fester. This thematic study can really be good because you really break down a topic, you know, a theme, and you really get to the meat and potatoes of it, right? Our homework for next week, I'm going to leave us about 10, 15 minutes. Our homework for next week is study the theme, Jesus' definition of a disciple. It's on your paper. It's number 3. Homework, study the theme, Jesus' definition of a disciple. So again, where are we going to look for that? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You're not going to go to Romans. You're not going to go to Jonah to get Jesus' definition. List all the verses. So find verses where Jesus specifically talks about what does it mean to be a disciple of his. Decide on questions you will ask. I'm only going to ask for one. If you were going to ask a question of Jesus' definition of a disciple, what would it be? Because I don't want everybody to get this in their mind. I know I've given you about 10 seconds to think about this.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
What question would you ask of that question? Seriously. The one that came to my mind immediately is, what's the cost? That's a good question. You know, Jesus' definition of a disciple, figure out some things. And one good question you can ask is, what does it cost me to be a disciple of Jesus? And go through there and look at the references where Jesus is talking about discipleship, where maybe Jesus is actually working with one of his disciples. Because he told him to leave father and mother, right? I'm going to have to hush. Okay, draw some conclusions. Well, again, our study next week is Jesus' definition of a disciple. Those of you that couldn't be here tonight, know that we love you, know that we missed you. Reach out to me with any questions, please. And I thank you. Bye-bye.